Well, never a doubt, just the way you draw it up. K-State wins the Rate Bowl 44-41 over Rutgers. We've got a lot to break down, and the outlook on 2025 probably looks a lot different than it did, about an hour ago to most K-State fans. Stick around. We'll break it all down next.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Well, my friends, it just doesn't get much better than the granddaddy of them all, the Rate Bowl, and everybody that was tuned into it got everything they wanted and more out of K-State and Rutgers, 44-41. Rutgers plays without its starting running back, manages to still rush for 164 yards on K-State. Looked like they were unstoppable for a while. Built a 17-point lead, but K-State outscores Rutgers 27-7 down the stretch. And rushes for what Cole tells me is a Kleiman era high against a Power 4 team. 347 rushing yards for K-State in this one. It is a little bit wild to me how the storylines and the narratives kind of flip on this one, Cole, based on where it was when it was 34-17. And not just losing a bowl game, but losing in the fashion that K-State was losing the game by at that point was really making it seem like, man, there might be some real issues here when you start to diagnose where things are going in 2025. And now you can pretty easily flip it into, well, damn, I mean, Zayshawn Rich, who may be relied upon to be CB1 next year, we'll see. I mean, he had a hell of a game after getting torched early. And then the defense did really lock it down, and the offense used a core of very young playmakers with Connor Riley, maybe his best game as K-State's offensive coordinator. And you're starting to think, okay, there's a lot to build around for next year. So I guess I'm going a little bit more big picture as opposed to the minutia of what happened in the game to kick things off here. But I don't know. I feel much, much differently than I did an hour ago based on the ending of that game, which may be a little bit foolish based on a bowl game, but I suppose it is what it is.
Well, I mean, look, the emotions and the roller coaster ride of like the group text and the Discord on patreon.com/3mod during the game are quite the thriller. It is an up and down emotion to where I'm like, how do you run it back with this coaching staff, with the way this game is going? You're down 34-17. You look like you're going to get run out of the Rate Bowl as 7.5-point favorites, which was the closing line against a Rutgers team whose best win was probably against 7-5 Minnesota this year. Hadn't really beaten anybody. Their 7-5 football team coming to this game without their best player and Kyle Manunga at running back. And it really wasn't the offense for me, John, that was causing so many questions and issues. It was just the Rutgers offense driving at will against Kansas State's defense. A Rutgers offense without their best offensive player, a team that relies on the running game with Manunga, who's first team all Big Ten, and the coaches and media poll. And I know people are going to say, well, K-State didn't have DJ Giddens. That's not the point here. It's really the point that this is a Rutgers offense that was completely gashing Kansas State's defense without their best player. And K-State eventually answered the call in the second half on the defensive side of the football, but the offense, 44 points. Now, I know Rutgers' defense isn't great. Their defensive coordinator took the UMass head coaching job. Greg Schiano, the Rutgers head coach, talked about all week and really all bowl prep that they didn't know how they were really going to call the plays, who was going to lead the charge on the defensive side of the football. But, man, I think the big question mark we had into this game, it was our Alenko top storyline of the week on the pregame show that DY and I did, John, was how will the K-State offense look without DJ Giddens? Mr. Consistent, 1,300-plus yards on the ground this year, third all-time leading rusher in school history, set the single-season rushing record for yards per carry at 6.6 this year. And what would it look like with Dylan Edwards and Joe Jackson in a backfield like that? And the answer is, and look, this is one game, and it is a bowl game against the Rutgers defense that isn't very good. But the answer is it looked like the best rushing attack in the Chris Kleiman era in terms of statistics. I mean, Kansas State, 8.8 yards per rush. That ties the Kleiman era high during his time at Kansas State, which began in 2019. And the 347 yards, or if you want to call it 351, John, before the two kneel downs at the end and discount those, and you call it 351, either way, it is the most against an FBS opponent, as you stated at the onset of the show. against an FBS opponent during the Chris Kleiman era. And we're talking about 70-plus games. Really incredible. In fact, in 2023, the most they had was 343 on the ground versus TCU. 2022, 343 versus Texas Tech. 2021, they had 269, the most in a game. 2020, 274 versus Texas in the season finale. In 2019, the most they had was 361 that year. That was against Nichols, but you take away Nichols, which was the very first game of the Kleiman era, and it was an FCS opponent. And the next closest was not close to the 347 or 351 tonight. So Dylan Edwards, absolutely phenomenal. Joe Jackson, good. Offensive line, good. Avery Johnson, good running the football. Just a explosive rushing attack we saw.
Yeah, even got Jace Brown involved as well in the ground game. And, man, I tell you what, I was seeing some of the takes at the beginning of the game, fire everybody, fire everybody. I thought you'd all be drinking your Ben Holiday bottled in bond bourbon thinking, man, we've got to demand some changes being made here. And now here at the end of the game, I'm seeing takes like this from Matthew. Says, hey, Joe Jackson's the new DJ Giddens. Dylan Edwards is the new Deuce Vaughn. We're stacked. I mean, that's what I'm talking about, these wild swings, all right? So Holiday Distillery, I'm sure, can appreciate that, as can anybody who is listening to this. So, hey, cheers to that take, Matthew. Cheers to that take. Ben Holiday bottled in bond bourbon or 360 vodka. Never mind the sign of that crappy booze that is behind Cole's left ear as you're looking at the screen right now. Don't worry about that. Drink Ben Holiday bottled in bond bourbon instead. But, man, you brought up Dylan Edwards. I mean, he is the top storyline coming out of this one, which, of course, is brought to you by our good friends at Alinco. I see people in the chat already nailing the Alinco read for us. Thank you for that, AJ. Yes, I have heard about our fine friends at Alinco. Great K-State folks who go all over Northeast Kansas and the KC Metro to do any remodeling project, big or small. Kohler Luckstone showers, you need them, they've got them. Whatever it is that you need, AJ, they can hook you up. Go to alencohome.com, AJ, ALENCO home.com to get hooked up with our friends at Alinco. Dude, Dylan Edwards, just a beast of a performance. He totes it 18 times, 196 yards, 10.9 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns, 65-yard long on the day. He also had 2 catches for 27 yards for good measure, so he goes over 200 total yards. Like, this was the game that we envisioned when Dylan Edwards committed. This was it, and it really hadn't happened all year. How many times, Cole, did we say during games this year, like, man, they just can't get him really to the second level. Like, they could, he had some 10 to 15-yard bursts, but they never could get him completely uncorked, and they finally hit it over and over again against the Rutgers defense today. That was really, it felt like this exhale of, like, you've had this tension with Dylan Edwards all year and people being frustrated and like, are they using him well enough? Are they using him the way that they should? Why is this not working out? Is he going to stay? I mean, I think we felt very good about the fact that he was going to stay before this game. Now, I would imagine this is just like the total, like, all right, everybody can exhale. You've got a guy who looks like he has legitimate star power next year. They've shown that they can figure out a way to really use him and utilize that second level speed as much as possible. And it just makes you feel great for him and great for really everybody involved there that he got totally loose today.
I just am thrilled for Dylan Edwards and everything that transpired, not just because it benefited K-State, but thrilled for the kid and Dylan Edwards. Look, this has been a bit of a struggle of a season for him. Now, I say that saying he still averaged over 6 yards per carry on the season coming into this game, but we expected more. And look, he didn't get as many touches as I think we would have liked. Didn't like the utilization at times throughout the season for him as well. But by all accounts, he's been a good teammate and a good kid in that locker room and was patiently awaiting his opportunity to really shine. And we knew with DJ Giddens out coming into this game, we were all curious what a backfield would look like of Joe Jackson, Dylan Edwards, and then Avery Johnson, obviously, as that dual threat quarterback. And could we see more of that explosion from Dylan Edwards? I feel like all season, John, we kept texting and saying to each other, man, it just feels like he was a shoestring away from busting that home run play. Well, let me tell you this, his longest run on the season coming into tonight was 44 yards, which came against Kansas this year. His previous long before that was 27 yards this season in terms of the rushing game. Tonight, he has a 65-yard touchdown run, a 36-yard touchdown run, a 43-yard run, and then a 26-yard touchdown catch. So he had three runs. Yeah.
Can I insert here? He probably could have had another like 70-yard touchdown catch and maybe another 40 or 50-yard catch. Like, he got wide open down the sideline with 2 deep balls that Avery just missed.
That's a great call out because, one, he had 3 steps on a defender that would have, if Avery connects on that is a 70-yard touchdown bomb or wherever. There was a huge play. And then another one probably is going to be like a 30, 35-yard pass with the safety leering over the top and, just overthrew him by about a yard there. And so you're right. I mean, he beat the defense all over the field in all different ways. Look, his season high in carries coming into tonight's game was 8. He had 18 carries. And then he had two receptions, and he was also targeted multiple other times. You mentioned it, the 2 deep balls overthrown. There was one in the flat that's probably a touchdown catch. Now, I saw some people say it may have gotten tipped on the very first drive of the game, and if it did, then credit to the Rutgers defense making a play there and getting their hand on the ball, but it looked like it would have been probably a touchdown for Dylan. Look, he was terrific. I mean, 196 yards, a bowl record, they said on the broadcast. So rushing yards record in a bowl game for a Kansas State rusher, 11 yards per carry. I mean, I mentioned it, the 43, 65, 36-yard runs. 3 of his 4 longest runs of the season came in tonight's game. Just a tremendous effort by Dylan Edwards and ecstatic for him. So thrilled for him. I mean, this is a guy with 350 yards on the season on the ground, John, and he had 196 tonight. I mean, he met 60, 70% of his production. Credit to Dylan. Credit to the O-line too. There were times where the receivers didn't do a very good job blocking on the perimeter, but I thought in the second half and in those last few drives, they really stepped up. And let me say this too, because like Dylan, we've always said, get him on the edge and he'll have success. And they got him on the edge more tonight. Credit to Connor Riley for that. But his 65-yard touchdown run was right up the A-gap, right up the middle. And he broke a tackle at the back end of that run. And man, was he special tonight. Anyone watching college football tonight and watching that bowl game is like, man, this Dylan Edwards kid, that could be a lot of fun to watch moving forward.
I mean, that's kind of the nice part about it. It feels like a springboard for him and just good vibes for everybody. Because look, like, I'm seeing people, somebody earlier in the chat, like, come on, guys, Rutgers wasn't ranked. That's a 7-5 team. They didn't have their best player. I get all of that, and it's silly to read too much into bowl games in a bunch of different ways, but there are little snippets like that can be very meaningful in terms of just fueling vibes for the offseason, especially in a transfer portal era when kids can leave. And Dylan Edwards is a very important piece of that, clearly, for next year. And I think we felt that way, but we hadn't seen this type of game out of him. And regardless of who it was against, you now know that type of game is available and he has that ability. Like, it's confirmed that sort of ability is there. And that, frankly, had not been seen from Dylan Edwards since literally the first game of his college career when he exploded against TCU for Colorado for 4 touchdowns. So it's there. It still is there. It's capable of being uncorked with Connor Riley calling the plays. And that's a very good thing for everybody involved. So I know that's kind of how I started the Dylan Edwards point. I will finish that this is the type of thing that can be meaningful going into the offseason, even if bowl games are hard to get up for, they're hard to get too excited for, and it's silly to draw big, meaningful, sweeping conclusions from bowl games, especially in this era. I still think that meant a lot. Very similar to, honestly, how last year it was kind of the coming out party for Avery Johnson, where it was like, all right, Avery played pretty well. You feel like, all right, there's definitely something there. It gave you some more confidence and fueled a lot of hype. I mean, frankly, that performance where a lot of people are watching, bowl season, college football fans are going to tune in, a lot of them to watch these games, and how much hype built around Avery Johnson. We had the New York Post picking him to win the Heisman, by the end of the offseason after people saw particularly the one play against NC State last year, but just the fact that he went out there, won the game, played well, this can be that type of thing for Dylan Edwards. Avery Johnson's a whole different discussion here, which is, still pretty up and down. I think obviously ran the ball well, and you like to see that. Avery had 11 carries, 57 yards, 1 touchdown, 5.2 yards per carry. Passing the ball, though, 50%, $195 through the air. 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. That 1 pick was very bad. He definitely got away with another one that could have been intercepted when he was trying to hit Dylan Edwards on the sideline. There are just still moments, he just still misses reads, locks into guys. He's good for a pretty ugly throw or two. every single game. And look, the overall stats are going to tell you that in terms of like where he's at in his class, that class of quarterback that he was in, performed very well this year. There's a lot to build on. He set the K-State passing touchdown record this year. Shout out to Cole for predicting him to break that back on the preseason pods. But it was another one of these like fairly uneven performances, I think it's fair to say, for Avery Johnson throughout the game.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, I don't know where this game goes, and perhaps I should have emphasized this on the Edwards discussion, John. If Dylan Edwards down 34-17 doesn't bust that 65-yard touchdown run, right out of the gate, first play of the drive, I mean, all the momentum is lost in that game at that point. And there's only about 6 minutes left in the third quarter in case it's down 17. If Dylan Edwards doesn't bust that 65-yard play, that's what swung the momentum in the game. I don't know, like, if they're just going straight drop back passing game. I don't know if Avery could have brought him back in this one the way it was going. I mean, things were reeling. I think they showed on the broadcast at one point in the second half, he was 1 of 6 for 13 yards through the air in the second half. He had the awful interception. Gosh, I'm blanking. Was that in the third quarter, John, when that happened, or was that in the late first half? I mean, I'm not even, I'm trying to recall.
I feel like that was late first half because I thought I remember it kind of broke serve, right? Like both teams were going back and forth, and that sort of broke serve, and it felt like, all right, well, that may be the game.
Yeah, it was. It was late first half. Then Rutgers goes down, gets a field goal after the interception to go up 27-17 at halftime. Look, the interception was really bad. Now, again, he broke the single season school passing record, 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions on the season. That does not sound bad in the grand scheme of things. There were some throws missed tonight, obviously, some opportunities with the deep ball. There was also an opportunity I saw just specifically nitpick a play that I really want to see Avery take a step in next year. There was a first down play. I think it was in the third quarter, maybe. Avery just steps up and runs right up the middle and just relies on his instincts and doesn't hesitate. He probably has a 50-yard run on a scramble situation. Instead, he trips over Easton Kilty's foot, takes like a 5-yard sack at that point, but he had a gigantic running lane. If he just go. I feel like sometimes Avery wants to stay in the pocket. He wants to be a pocket quarterback. I understand it. But sometimes you just got to rely on that athleticism and take off and use your legs, that he is such a valuable asset. And like to see that a little bit more next year with him still avoiding hits for the most part. So, up and down game for Avery. Now, he had some big plays, no question about it. And there's still some things, even in successful plays, that you're like, I wish he would have went here. I'll say like the 2-point conversion, John, when it was 42-41. Actually, and he threw it and he completed it. But Jaden Jackson
he made it harder on himself.
Yeah, you saw it, right? Yeah. Everybody saw it. Jaden Jackson is just wide open. Nobody around him, and he's the shorter throw. And he made the harder throw, and thank goodness it worked. The Dylan Edwards, the 2-point conversion, I mean, that ball is there. If he just, and I thought Dylan would have been the primary read based off the motion look that he did. And he just moves off of him and misses a wide open Dylan Edwards on a 2-point conversion. And so, there were some missed opportunities from Avery tonight, and you hope he takes the next step now with a full offseason under his belt. But some encouraging things from the offense. I mean, even if they were going to lose this game 41-36, John, if they wouldn't have scored that last touchdown, I would have put it completely on the defense. Because if you would have told me going into the game that the offense would put up 36, I'm not going to blame them. For the most part, they were solid outside of that turnover. It was the defense that was so frustrating for the first 3/4 of that game.
Defense, and you know who else contributed in the negative column, Cole?
Oh, Nate Katzer, man. Goodness. And I have to say this, okay? Like, obviously, they allow the big punt return, and there was probably a block in the back on that. I think a lot of people have saw it. There were some misses there. Okay, I have to ask this, John. Did you notice watching the game? I don't know what K-State was doing on punt returns when they went to return a punt. They left an unmanned guy every time just streaking down the field. It's why K-State had to fair catch every freaking punt. I don't know what Nate Katzer was designing there.
Except for one, and that one, Sterling Lockett just about got killed. So
because it was the same guy. It was the same guy, a free runner. I mean, it wasn't even like anything deceptive, John. I was at my parents' house. I'm pointing out to my dad. I'm like putting my pen up to the TV. I'm like, hey, see that guy? He's uncovered. He's going freely down the field. And then it happened again. They were outnumbered. And so just That was ridiculous. But they got
a holding call, at a crucial time. They get a holding call also right after they had given up a big return. I mean, it just every week, dude, every effing week, the special teams unit is awful.
Good punts tonight. They did get better punts off tonight. Simon McClanahan had better punts. They didn't miss any kicks, and they got every snap down. The basics.
Yeah, Tenet, cover your ears. It's not you, buddy. You are exempt. But everything else, I don't understand how they can allow the special teams unit to be that bad. I got DMs again from my Texas Tech fan friend. Let me read this one to you exactly. I know we need to take a break, Nick. I'll get there in just a minute. My Texas Tech fan friend said, please get a new special teams coordinator. I desperately want that to improve. Never thought I'd see K-State special teams this bad. It's a Texas Tech fan. That's like the third time this year he sent me a DM about K-State special teams. For the love of all that is holy, can we please make a change? Stanton Weber, guys, I'll start a GoFundMe, whatever it is that we need to do. Damn, I don't know. I'm Cole. By the way, I have a very spicy take for you that I want to deliver after we talk about our friends at Home Field Apparel. Maybe if we send Chris Kleiman some Home Field Apparel, they'll get the special teams figured out. Cole now has I see that you copied me and went and got the pullover, which does look very, very nice. Kudos to you on that. Was that a Christmas present?
It was indeed. Yes, got it for the holidays. I told everybody to go get your home field gear for the holidays with the discount code 3MAW24. Go get stocked up. And I was fortunate enough to get this for the holidays from our friends over at Home Field. And man, John, I don't know, like the one thing that really surprised me about this jacket when I got it, I knew it looked good. I saw it on you. I saw it on Jerome Tang as well, and it looked good. This thing's a lot warmer than I thought. I mean, I thought it was like your normal windbreaker, and they don't really keep you all that warm. This thing not only is super comfortable, doesn't just block the wind, but like is really well insulated to the point that I was in the house earlier today doing some stuff. I had to take it off because I got hot. So it's super comfortable. Really like the design and kind of that retro look, just like all the Home Field gear. But I'm really grateful for our friends over at Home Field for supplying and for the holiday gift that I got with this Home Field jacket.
Thick with 2 C's is what he is saying. Thick with 2 C's.
That's right.
Homefieldapparel.com. They've got 50 plus K-State designs, 100 plus other teams. 3MAW24 for 15% off your first order. We're back in just a moment.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com. Okay, Cole, this take I think you saw because it was I'm credit where it's due. This came from Mason Both. It was in the group chat that we're in with him during the game. But did you see at one point he said, is Connor Riley better without DJ Giddens as an offensive coordinator? Like, was there something about feeling the need to like slam DJ Giddens in between the tackles in the second half of the year when the line was not blocking that particularly well and the looks were not good for that when teams had really adjusted to him? Is there something about like being forced to operate so much differently with Joe Jackson, utilizing Jace Brown, obviously Dylan Edwards? If there's something about that made it more conducive to him being a more successful offensive coordinator without having almost like the distraction of DJ Giddens there, which is not meant to denigrate DJ Giddens at all. I think you understand what I'm saying there.
I didn't see Mason's I mean, you know me, I wasn't checking everything on my phone, had my phone down for much of the game. So I didn't see Mason's post, but that is actually a great thought. It's a great question because the offense, I mean, look, I don't have any qualms. Like, you're going to have qualms with a play here and there. You're going to have that with any game in football with the offensive coordinator. But like when you look at the grand picture, like a lot of the missed plays weren't necessarily because of play calls. They were there. I mean, it was just not executing necessarily. 44 points is pretty darn special. I mean, I'm just looking at K-State's schedule, John, this year to see if they scored 44. They scored 45 at West Virginia. The 44 is the second most that Kansas State scored in a game this year. They had 41 in the season opener against UT Martin. They had 41 against Cincinnati. Outside of that, you had 14 against Arizona State, 21 against Iowa State. the offense had 546 yards before the kneel downs in the game, almost 8 yards per play. You got the running game going. They were more on the perimeter, more stretch runs, more getting out to the edge. Now, they still attacked the middle a decent amount, but they had to be more innovative. They got Avery on the move more. They got him out of the pocket. There were some completed passes to Jace and others out of the pocket. Jace Brown probably had more rushing yards than any point this season, three carries for 42 yards just in this game alone at wide receiver. A lot of motion. I felt like they ran a ton of motion tonight in this game. And I also just have to say, like, when you look at the rushing attack, Joe Jackson 7 for 50 yards, 2 Avery the 11 for 57, Jace 3 for 42. I mean, 99% of your rushing yards tonight came from guys that are going to be back on next year's team. Yeah, I think they might be better off in terms of the play calling, not having a DJ Giddens, John, that's going to go and get you a 3rd and 1, a 3rd and 2, and you got to do something else than give it to your ground and pound running back that you're like, yeah, I know he can go get me those couple of yards. Got to be a little bit more creative. So, yeah, I think it's a great question and not something that we're necessarily going to know the answer from just tonight's game, but it's something to be paying attention to next season over a few games to see if maybe that was it. So Connor Riley did a nice job tonight. I have no issues with the play calling. Easy to say when they win and score 44, I know, but I thought he was rock solid.
Well, especially if you combine, thinking about, all right, well, I've got this bulldozer of a back, plus like I'm an offensive line guy, right? So my offensive line should be able to, if we can't with DJ Giddens and this offensive line, get 2-3 yards here, then maybe there's something to that mentality, and you had to just abandon all of that because it was much more finesse, the way that K-State had to operate today. And look, Joe Jackson deserves mention too. I mean, I've said it all year. He really looks like he's got some juice, and you saw it again tonight. He didn't get a ton of work. It was obviously more about Dylan Edwards, but Joe Jackson had 7 carries for 50 yards. That's 7 yards a carry. He had 3 catches for 37 yards and a touchdown. So if you're looking at that overall, 10 touches for 87 yards and a touchdown, like that's pretty damn good. I think you could see visibly he was wearing a pretty bulky like brace on his shoulder. I do think he's battled some injuries in his time at K-State, and that will be one of the questions is just durability, especially I think when we believe that maybe this game changes it a bit. I think the plan certainly was to have Dylan Edwards be utilized more in the passing game and the slot heading into next year, kind of formalizing more of a role for him that way. We know that they've been tinkering around with the idea of running backs in the transfer portal. We'll see what happens there. I think I certainly would feel more comfortable if they are able to add somebody, but this certainly, I think, gives you justification for like the skill level that they have in the backfield. Durability, we shall see. But it's pretty clear that Joe Jackson is a guy that they have felt good about from a talent standpoint, and you definitely see why. I mean, the more touches he gets, the more it looks like, okay, this guy is pretty damn explosive. So I don't doubt that. What I do doubt is would he have the durability if he's going to be the primary back throughout the year. So you may still need some insurance there, but at least me feeling a lot better about where you're at that position.
Yeah, I think Jackson's rock solid. He has been dinged up some during the season. I don't believe he's missed any game action necessarily as a result. But, when you look at guys they're going after in the portal, John, a lot of the guys I've been looking at is some of the bigger back types, physical running backs. And it's almost like they probably feel like they need kind of that bruiser for like 4 to 5 carries a game in short yardage situations to take maybe some of the hits off of Joe Jackson and Dylan Edwards in that regard. But yeah, Joe Jackson's a dude, man. So is Dylan. I mean, you mentioned the receiving yard numbers. He had a huge catch for 20 something yards, maybe 27 yards in this game in the fourth quarter. I mean, Dylan and Joe Jackson combined for 5 receptions for 64 yards. You'll take that, and 2 touchdowns through the air. Joe also had the receiving touchdown. That was a nice play call by Connor Riley as well. Dylan had the 26-yard touchdown catch coming out on the flat, which was, again, another play call that was really well drawn up. He didn't even get contacted until he's going into the end zone. And so, yeah, you'll take anytime you get the production that Kansas State got from those two tonight, you feel really good about it. And then you add in Avery Johnson's dual threat capacity, which he finishes with over 600 yards rushing on the season. Pretty special night in terms of the overall offensive performance. I also wanted to call out in terms of the live game action, John, credit to Coach Kleiman, because some coaches maybe wouldn't have done this, even though it seemed obvious to me. There was probably around 10 and a half, 11 minutes left in the game. K-State is down 41 what was the score at that point? Was it
when he went for it on 4th and 3?
Yeah, 4th and 3. It was 41-29, right?
Yeah, they were down by 12, yeah.
Yeah, and he went for it, and Avery Johnson, I mean, I'm screaming run, right? Like, Avery's going to get the first down if he just takes off and runs, but he's probably only going to get like 5 yards, so he's going to get it by a couple yards. And he has the guts to throw it to Dante Cephas, who was wide open, by the way. Good throw. And Cephas gets a chunk play, 35 yards, and then K-State eventually goes down, punches it in, and gets it to 41-36, and then they get
You know what that Cephas play reminded me of, though? That, like, I was having my heart dropped when I saw him let the ball go. Reminded me of first SMU drive. SMU has a chance to go up 7-0 on Penn State. Kevin Jennings rolls out. He can get the first down if he just runs, and he tries to take the shot to the end zone. And the guy was wide open, but he biffed the throw, and then it was all downhill from there.
Yeah, no, it's a good call out. Recall that play vividly. That game might went a little differently if Kevin Jennings had just run and took the first down at that point. But that was a big play. I mean, how often do you see, like, K-State doesn't come back much in the history of K-State football when they're down 12 points, 2 scores with 11, 12 minutes left in the game. Usually doesn't work out well. And Kansas State made a ton of plays on both sides of the football to overcome that. They get it to a 5-point game with 7 minutes left, and then the defense just forces a huge 3-and-out. I do have to, I've got some numbers on the K-State defense, first half struggles and the first couple drives of the second half, John, that I could call out that I'd prepared and jotted down at halftime.
Well, yeah, I want to get to the numbers, but first of all, what do we make of that? Like, what do we attribute that to? I mean, they're down Jacob Parrish, obviously, who's an NFL corner. It's clear he was apparently a lot of the glue that was holding the secondary together. They just didn't have much juice. They got the 3-and-out on the first drive, and then for the next 25 minutes of game action, they couldn't stop him at all. There was no chance. It felt like I was watching the 2003 Chiefs playing the Colts in the playoffs. Like there was no chance of stopping them at all. And then they just completely, what's the meme of that? Billy Mays, there's a thing leaking water and he just slaps whatever the product is that he's selling on it, just stops it right away. It was like the defense just flipped a switch like that, and it completely flipped on its head. I'm not sure I totally know what to make of how crazy that defensive performance was.
Yeah, so let's start. K-State's offense concludes the game. Their last 5 drives, they score 27 points, an astonishing 5.4 points per drive. Rutgers' first 6 drives after the first initial 3-and-out and the punt, right? Their next 6 drives, they score 34 points on 6 drives. 5.7 points per drive, John. They were essentially averaging a touchdown every drive, almost 6 points every time they got the football over 6 drive stretch, had 34 points. Rutgers ends up scoring 42 points or 41 points in this game, tying the most that they had against a P4 opponent this year. They had just scored 41 in the regular season finale against Michigan State. Now, your question is, what did you make of this performance? Watching it live, I was like, well, I mean, Jacob Parrish is a hell of a good corner, but he was the only guy they were really missing from a defense that was 4th in the Big 12 in points per drive allowed, going up against a Rutgers offense without their best offensive player, Manunga, the running back, obviously, who I mentioned already, was first team All Big Ten in both the coaches and media poll, and was second team All Big Ten last year. And a Rutgers offense that hadn't been explosive all year, John. They were averaging 5.2 yards per play coming into this game, which ranked 92nd in the country. And at one point early on in the third quarter, they were averaging almost 9 yards per play. K-State's defense was giving up explosives left and right. By halftime, Rutgers had 11 plays of 10 or more yards. They had a 65-yard run and a 60-yard pass. Rutgers had 3 plays of 60 yards in 12 games in the regular season. They had 2 in the first half against Kansas State. I'm watching and I'm like, well, you've got almost all your guys still playing on the defensive side of the football outside of Parrish. Like, what the heck is going on out there? There wasn't much of a pass rush. They were getting gashed in the running game, which was infuriating because I mentioned it already. Manunga wasn't playing. They didn't really have anybody else that had done much in the rushing game this season. Kalakamanis is a 54% career completion percentage guy. Now, he completes under 50% at the end of the day in this game, 14 of 32. But it was infuriating watching the defense gave up a lot of 3rd and 7s, 3rd and 8s throughout. Guys were wide open. Just assignment errors, like Jack Fabris a couple different times, just infuriating. They got the edge multiple times with nobody touching a guy for Rutgers. It was a brutal first 34, 35 minutes for Kansas State's defense. What I will say is Rutgers' last 6 drives, John, they scored 1 touchdown. So they had 7 points on 6 drives to conclude the game. But what's more impressive is this. Here were their last 6 drives of the game. 3 plays for negative 10 yards. 2 plays for negative 6 yards that concluded an interception by Cobbs for Kansas State. 5 plays for 18 yards, a touchdown. But that was because
it was the one time I was about you, boy. You know where I was going to be all over that. The one touchdown they had was gift wrapped from Nate Katz's special teams unit.
Yeah, so that wasn't on the defense. 5 plays, 18-yard touchdown. The next drive after that, 3 plays, negative 5 yards. The next drive, 3 plays, 1 yard, and the next drive that concludes the game when K-State gets a stop on 4th and 7 near midfield, 5 plays for 22 yards. So you're talking about 3 different drives, John, that ended in negative yardage in terms of the amount of yards they got. Rutgers' last 6 drives of the game, they ran 21 plays. They gained 20 yards. It's incredible. Like, think about the numbers I just told you about what happened in the first 35 minutes of the game. And then they only get 20 yards of offense on the last 21 plays, on the last 6 drives. Here's another number on the rushing attack that Rutgers had. Rutgers had 143 yards on 16 carries with 4 minutes and 45 seconds left in the third quarter. Rutgers finishes the game with 36 carries for 164 yards. Rutgers' final 20 carries, and this includes sacks, obviously, in case they got home. They brought pressure. Toby, other guys got to him and created some sacks. But their last 20 carries, including sacks, they went for a combined 21 yards. So 143 on the first 16 and then 21 on the last 20. Pretty wild. It's K-State's defense really shut the door, and that'll get us to the next point I'm sure we're going to talk about. I know we wanted to hit on Zayshawn Rich, a corner, a future stud, true freshman out of Minnesota. They love this kid. We'll talk about him more in depth, but I would also say Toby Osunsami, I thought, changed the tenor of this game up front, John.
Yeah, I mean, 2 guys that we feel pretty good about, obviously, them being locked in and coming back next year, things to build around. Rich, early in the game, it was easy to be a little discouraged because the defense isn't playing well. And we've been having this conversation about the portal. There have been some really nice portal wins lately for K-State, offensively and defensively. Maldonado from Arizona, for instance, big win, but that's a safety. That's not a corner. And you're thinking, well, you've got to have a Jacob Parrish replacement. If you don't, like Zayshawn Rich, as a true sophomore, is probably CB1. And I'm not saying they should just abandon trying to get anybody in the portal now. I would still feel a lot better if he is CB2, but I think you see why coaches feel like the upside is certainly there for him to be hopefully the next Jacob Parrish. His career trajectory right now is pretty similar to what happened with Parrish when he kind of burst onto the scene and started playing early. And man, he just had energy. He was sticking to guys, flying all over, making plays, batting balls down, and then he gets the play that seals the game at the end, too, with the last tackle on 4th down. It seemed like he had a nose for the ball there. You saw a lot of great things, and all of it happened as he's responding to adversity after he got torched for a really long pass play early in the game. So those are all traits that I really, really like to see, and that is another one when I talk about, like, hey, big picture conclusions from bowl games, dangerous, silly, especially in this era to do that. Like, I don't care who Rutgers actually had out there playing. I know that that's not a particularly dynamic passing attack, but for a guy at that stage in his career, that shows you the upside. I'm not saying that game convinced me that I would feel great about going into next year thinking, all right, we're trying to win double-digit games and we need Rich to be ready to be the guy, CB1, but I definitely see the upside and the potential there, and it made me feel better about him being a starter next year, which I think is you're barreling toward that almost no matter what happens in the portal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, Rich is a longer corner. You mentioned Parrish. Obviously, Parrish came on at the back end of his true freshman season, played in the Big 12 championship game against TCU. Rich is a guy that was an unheralded 3-star recruit out of Minnesota with little offers that we started hearing a ton of buzz from, and that really came from DY, right? DY was talking about Zayshawn Rich before the season even started, that the coaches were just raving about this guy, that they were going to have a hard time keeping him off the field. And I'm like, This guy didn't have really any other P4 offers that I noticed. He's a true freshman, really, like Zayshawn Rich. And as you saw him come on and he played some meaningful snaps against Colorado and Boulder earlier this year, you saw the potential. And he's longer. We know this staff absolutely loves him. And you mentioned it, like he gets beat on a deep ball early on in that game. And instead of tucking his tail in, I mean, he balled out the rest of the game. I'm not sure they completed another ball on Zayshawn Rich the rest of the game when he was targeted afterwards. And they got targeted a few different times. He was phenomenal. Probably broke up several passes. He's going to be a special player. And you got to feel good about that moving forward. Now, yes, I do think they need to add a veteran piece, a proven guy in the portal. I think you see glimpses with Donovan McIntosh, who made a couple plays tonight. Now, he also had a couple plays where you're like, what is he doing? He's a redshirt freshman. We talk about bigger corners. He's more of your Julius Brents type, right? He's 6'2", 6'3", was a nice recruiting win out of the St. Louis area a couple of years ago. He's going to be heading into his third year at Kansas State next year as well. Now, he had a pass where it was like 3rd and 8, and he's given like a 15-yard cushion. And you're like, what are we doing? And there were guys busted wide open out on crucial plays in this game where nobody in sight for K-State's defense. That were some assignment errors clearly. But you think McIntosh and Rich, they can definitely be pieces. You feel probably even better about Rich. Need to add a veteran piece at corner. Justice James will be back as well. I think Kenigel Thomas might have even played in this game, a guy who redshirted this year because of injuries heading into the season. Maybe he's back for Kansas State. He'd be heading into his sophomore year as well. So add a veteran piece of corner, and you might be okay, because I think Zayshawn Rich showed tonight that at worst he's going to be cornerback 2 next year, and a guy that you feel pretty darn good about carrying the momentum forward next year on that front.
Who do you, if I gave you one guess as to what the only other offer listed on his recruiting profile is, what would you guess?
I don't even think it was Minnesota, was it? It wasn't.
No.
We're talking probably like a group of 5 school, right, John?
Yep.
Toledo, maybe?
Wyoming.
Oh, that's right. Wasn't he? I think he was. DY could correct us on this. I think he was committed to Wyoming at one point. Okay. I think K-State actually.
Yep. I'm looking at some old articles. Wyoming commit talks K-State visit. So yeah, he was committed to Wyoming.
Yep. So they got him decommitted from Wyoming. And when you look at the offers and stuff, you're like, I don't know what to be excited about that necessarily. But these guys have a knack for finding those corners that are unheralded. Jacob Parrish didn't have any offers out of high school, and then they got him committed. And then his track numbers blew up, and then a bunch of the powerhouse programs came after him late and tried to flip him, but K-State was able to hold on to him. They're pretty good at identifying, for the most part, guys in the secondary.
Well, I mean, yeah, even you want to go the run that they had in the portal. I mean, like Reggie Stubblefield, Josh Hayes. These were not – Julius Brents was a pretty nice win, and I think people understood that he had, like, NFL ceiling. But a lot of those other guys that were really effective, and some who played in the NFL, Russ Yeast, they've been good with that. And that's why, people roll their eyes at me, I think, a lot in the Discord, patreon.com/3maw, if you want to take part in this daily discussion. But in the Discord, I'm always telling, people see in the portal, I'm like, oh, this is lame. We don't recruit well. We don't land big time guys in the portal. And I'm always sitting there saying, like, guys, they've been pretty good in the portal, and it's generally with guys that are not really high-profile wins. And some of their most high-profile wins, like a Keegan Johnson, have not really been very productive. So just give it some time here. Like, they've been pretty good at mining the portal for players that, and Derek has made this point, if they're not in like the top 50, everything else is a lot about fit and scouting, and it's just kind of a crapshoot. So, yeah, I would say be patient with that. Now, having said that, yes, it seems like they need to have a real sense of urgency to add another corner here at some point, and that hasn't really happened yet. But either way, Zayshawn Rich, very, very much a positive from tonight. Good for another. I appreciate you. Thank you for being in here. You asked earlier who the favorite poster in the Discord is. Obviously, it's you, but you haven't been around very much lately. And instead, we've been getting negative Harambe shoved down our throat 24/7. So I need you around, GFA, to calm the waters a little bit, to be a positive force on the other side, okay? So if you could do that for us, I know it's the holidays. It would be a nice Christmas present for all of us. Okay. Anything else, Cole? What else do we need to unpack here?
Well, I was just running down. I'm sorry if I looked distracted. I was still listening to you, John, but I was running down the last 21 plays that went for 20 yards for Rutgers on those last 6 drives of the game, because I was wondering, like, what did Kyle Kamanis, just thinking about the passing numbers and what Zayshawn Rich and the K-State secondary started to do. Here are the passing situations, John, dropping back in those last 21 plays. Now, it's not 21 total, but during those 21 plays, they probably dropped back like 10 times, right? Sack, incomplete, interception, incomplete, incomplete, sack, incomplete, 16-yard completion, 0-yard run where he just falls over his own feet on that 3rd and 7 near midfield, right? Fortunately, because I thought he had probably a pretty good amount of room to run, right?
Yeah, that was good. I watched Will Howard did that the other day. He actually did that once in the Tennessee game the other day, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So, and then concludes with the 3-yard pass that obviously was the turnover on down. So during those last 21 plays, those last 6 drives, he completed, it appears to be 2 passes for 19 yards, was sacked 3 times, had an interception, and 13 of those 21 plays went for 0 yards or a loss of yards. So K-State's defense really buckled down when it mattered most. And you could feel, John, I feel like the momentum obviously in this game shifted. K-State looked flat. Like when they're down 34-17, like it looks over, right? And again, this gets back to the point, like if Dylan Edwards doesn't bust that home run play, I think they're toast. But him busting that, then the very ensuing drive, K-State gets a 3 and out, and like you sense the whole thing turn. And K-State looked like they had energy on defense. They got a little belief. Then the offense scores again, and you could see the defense flying around the football field. They were really special in those last 6 drives. Obviously, the numbers tell it, but also very poor on the first 6 to 7 drives of the game. I'm still not sure what happened there, but again, Toby Osensami, a guy that you just are so high on coming back next year. Zayshawn Rich, another really, really nice piece that you got to feel really good about. Now, some of the young safeties, they got to play better. Wesley Fair, Jack Fabris, you got to see those guys take a step next year. Linebacker play has to improve as well. Austin Romaine is a special piece, but other guys got to step up and play better too. Chidi Obiizor had a big sack in the game. K-State obviously brought some pressure. And I would just say also, John, that 4th and 7, like when he completes it on the last drive of the game, and K-State brought like 6-7 guys, right? I'm like, oh, as soon as it was completed, I just assumed he was going to run for the first down. I mean, K-State had multiple guys there, not just Zayshawn Rich. Siegel came up. They had no chance to make that play. So a huge credit to the defense and Klanderman for cleaning things up there down the stretch. Nice win, 9 wins. 10 wins in 22, 9-4 last year, 9-4 this year. Look, you know my qualms with the 8-4 comment after the Iowa State game, but I will say this, like 27-12, I think that's what it comes out to be, right? Over the last 3 years, and winning 9 games or more in 3 consecutive seasons is a pretty respectable number.
Oh, respectable.
Okay. Now, am I satisfied with this season? No, John, I'm not. And they got to take a step next year. Like you can't if they go 9-4, if they go 9-4 again next year, John, I'm not gonna be saying this. All right, you're not gonna hear respectable. They got to take a step.
Cole, how do you feel about this level of company? Okay, what would you if I gave you this list of college football? If I gave you this list of college football programs, what would you say? Alabama, Georgia, Oregon, Clemson. If I gave you that list of college football programs, what would you say?
There's something to be said about having a safe floor, which Chris Kleiman has done Chris Kleiman's done a really nice job at Kansas State. He was the perfect hire taking over for Bill Snyder. He's done a really, really nice job. All right. I just need to see a little bit more of the highs. I want more of the highs, right? And next year feels like it needs to be that high. They need to continue to make some steps in the portal these next, few weeks, get some more pieces. They've done a pretty nice job so far in addressing some issues. I think tonight's game made me think they probably need, 3 or 4 more guys to feel really good about heading into next season. Next year needs to be a Big 12 championship type run. Like they need to be in Arlington for me. You got a returning starting quarterback going into his 3rd year of college football. You're going to have a lot of key pieces back, and you're adding guys in the portal. In this Big 12, it is wide open. and Kansas State needs to win. Like K-State needs to go 10-2 next year, and I won't complain. Go 10-2.
Typical junkie, just needs more high.
I do. I don't know, John. Like, what do you like? How do you kind of digest the season?
I have some thoughts. I've got a couple of things. I'm going to complete the thought here. That list of teams that I gave you, this is courtesy of Tyler Dreiling. List of Power 4 football teams who have earned 3 straight 9-win seasons with at least one conference title. That's Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Oregon, and K-State. So that, there's some selective endpoints there, but that's a pretty good poll. That's a pretty good poll from TD. This season, well, I was also going to make you go through a list of like what is the list of things that need to happen for them to go 10-2 next year. But how do I summarize this season? Generally a little bit disappointing for sure. I had them at 9-3. I think the game that, in hindsight, looking at how good Arizona State turned out to be, the game that is the very disappointing one that like really kind of kills you is obviously Houston. If they win the Houston game, go 9-3, I think I would have. It just would have. That just was such a bummer toward the back end of the season, and you hit such a slide there at the end. I think it was understandable I think the biggest misnomer for the season from where we were at the beginning of the year heading into this year is that Avery Johnson could be a very much competent quarterback to good quarterback based on where he's at in his career, and that it would still involve so many ups and downs that it was going to make it difficult to be a Big 12 championship caliber team this year. And that's where, like, if we're talking about what happens next year, like you're right. You need a corner in the portal. I'd feel better with a receiver in the portal. Obviously they have Tibbs from Purdue. I'd feel better with another receiver in the portal. They're going to need a tackle or two in the portal. Like, there are some of those needs that we could go down the list. But to me, the number one thing is Avery Johnson's got to develop.
Yep.
And that is that's not a slam. I've seen two totally different opinions of Avery Johnson, his performance tonight and his performance this season in the chat, even just within the last hour that I've been monitoring everything that's being said there. He's got to get better. And I'm not somebody that hates on him and thinks he's been bad. I think he's been good considering where he is in his career, and we had too lofty of expectations for him, and he is not like a prodigious talent at this stage in his career, but he's still got tremendous upside based on that skill set. We've seen some really nice things, but he is going to need to get more consistent in his decision-making, his reads, and throwing deep balls. All that's going to have to take a pretty big step forward. And I think the foundation is definitely there. I think the upside is definitely there, but Matt Wells is going to have to bring him along. This is where Matt Wells really earns the salary that you're paying him. And, this needs to be like Jordan Love level of development. You're going to need Avery Johnson to take a significant step forward next year for any of this to work. The way that we really want it to, which would be, yes, winning double-digit games and giving yourself a chance to get to Arlington. That will be the thing, I think, above all else. And I think the pieces will generally probably be there. Outside of that, if he can make that sort of a step. Yep.
I would echo all that. Avery Johnson's progression and development is the number one key for next season, getting to the ceiling of being a Big 12 champion. Look, you got a starting quarterback that got 13 games under his belt as a starter this year, saw a lot of different things, and now is going to have 8 months in an off-season program again, heading into his third year, which you would expect to see a pretty good step. And again, we talked about it on the onset of the show, like Avery comparative to his class, right, of second-year quarterbacks at this level. The only guys, when I talked to DY, John, that were maybe even comparable were Sam Leavitt at Arizona State, who was not the highly ranked guy, right, that Avery is, but Sam Leavitt's been pretty darn good, obviously, for Arizona State this year. And then Nico Amaleva, which I know I mispronounced it. That's my role.
Oh, my God.
Whatever. I just say it really fast, so you're going to try not – I don't care. I don't care.
All
right. I don't even know if he's been better than Avery this year, John. In the grand scheme of things, when you look at the numbers for Avery, right? Like tonight, he finishes the year with over 2,700 yards through the air, 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, over 600 yards rushing and 7 rushing touchdowns, right? So over 3,300 yards, 32 touchdowns to probably 12, 13 turnovers when you count fumbles in. There are some frustrating plays that he has made that have helped flip games when you think about the interceptions at Houston, the safety against Iowa State, etc. And those are the types of plays that I don't think happen next season. And with another year in the program and more continuity. I'll also say this, I thought his deep balls had gotten quite a bit better over the back half of the season until tonight. And then he overshot Dylan Edwards a couple different times. But
and it was really the one. The first one is the one that was a killer. The
second one was hard.
The second one was tougher. That was fitting it in a tighter window. Dylan only had a step as opposed to 2 or 3 steps. But that first one, you could see it coming. Dylan had the leverage. You knew he was going to toast him, and you just got to put a little more air under that thing. So,
yeah. And I'll say this too, for the K-State ground attack, as much as we and I'm probably more guilty of this than anybody that has been hard on Connor Riley this year. When K-State they did. They by far and away shattered the single season school rushing record for yards per carry, John. The yards per carry record, I want to say it was 2016, 5.27 yards per carry in a single season for K-State as an offense as a whole. They came tonight at over 5.9 yards per carry, and tonight they averaged well over 8 yards per rush. So they're going to probably finish the season by the time the final numbers come out at over 6 yards per rush, which is, 0.7 of a yard more than any team in program history, which is pretty remarkable, honestly. And so I've been hard on Connor Riley, and I'm still like to see some changes, but he was speaking of growth, right? Assuming he's back as the offensive coordinator, not only Avery progressing and heading into his 3rd year of college football, but Connor Riley's 2nd year as an offensive coordinator, learning lessons that carry over and adjustments, etc. Hopefully those carry through, and K-State will make that next step into 2025 and start it off with a bang in Ireland against Iowa State, and hopefully end in that struggle against the Clones.
That's going to be well, if you're talking about things you can make up, kind of in the margins to get better outside of, again, I think bigger picture, all this is really going to hinge on Avery taking a step forward. But more consistency from your OC, probably more consistency from the offensive line. You are also going to need, I'm telling, special teams. I know that it's almost a bit at this point. Cole's going to complain about officiating. I'm going to complain about special teams, but for real, they're atrocious. They're really bad. And I don't have any hope that there's going to be a change made there. Nate Katzler did last in the NFL for a long time as a special teams coach. Clearly there's got to be something there, but they need to really, really evaluate that. I'm good with Kleiman sticking up for his guys at press conferences. He's done that for a long time, going back to 2021 when he was calling Will Howard the best backup quarterback in the country, and people were getting frustrated at how hyperbolic he could be with comments like that. He generally does that. I assume that behind closed doors, he has to realize how much they have struggled this year generally. That if they can get better with that, man, that would go a long way toward giving them a chance in some of these closer games. You do make a good point about next year, though. I keep forgetting that first freaking game is a conference game in Ireland.
And you got Army coming into Manhattan, who won 10+ games this year and won the American Athletic Conference, which once again, you get to play the American Athletic Conference champs, with Army coming in. And look, Army might not be as good next year, but it's a tricky system to prepare for with Munkin as the head coach. And so it will be you start off up and running against next year's slate. And that Iowa State game is going to be huge for this season. Because, John, what's the narrative going to be? You lose that game. It's not just losing a normal non-con dud. You're 0-1 in the league to start the season. You do not want that. And that's what makes that game more unique, is that it is a Big 12 game to start up the year. And so
and to a team that will probably be a contender too, So I was going to go to Nick, if you can bring up in the starred category, starter 179, which is good to see him here. Appreciate you being here, starter 179. So he asked who will be your top 3 teams in the Big 12 going into 2025. I imagine you're going to see a lot of Arizona State, Iowa State, Baylor.
Tech's going to get a lot of love.
Texas
just because
Tech,
of the portal
right.
success.
Texas Tech with the portal. Yeah, Tech's got the best portal class in the country. At least they did the last I checked. I don't know if Lane Kiffin has pulled himself away from Twitter long enough to land somebody else to jump them. But yeah, I mean, those 4 teams for sure are going to have a lot of buzz. And I'm trying to scan quickly if I'm missing anybody obvious there. But like, Arizona State with what they have done.
What's BYU got coming back? Were they pretty veteran heavy?
BYU, the thing with BYU is that I feel like a lot of people are going to be like they were kind of lucky this year.
Yeah.
They probably won't get as much buzz. I mean, Baylor just finished on a tear, and Sawyer Robertson looks awesome. They've also been pretty good in the portal, I think, so far this year. Tech has a bunch of talent everywhere. Arizona State, quite obviously, with what they've done, and they're looking pretty impressive in the portal right now, too.
Did you mention Colorado? Because, I mean, they'll
get
a
Colorado.
lot of...
Yeah, Colorado. They've got Caden Slater from Liberty coming in at quarterback, or it could be Julian Lewis. I don't know if he'll be ready, but they've got some insurance for that. I would anticipate Colorado may take a bit of a step back just because Shedeur, as crazy as it sounds, may be the most underrated player in the country. He was just so overshadowed by Travis Hunter that he was really good and covered up a lot for them. So Colorado may take a step back. But, I mean, there's 5 teams right there that are probably going to get more buzz than K-State in the offseason. Maybe
that's better.
I do think that's probably better. I bet K-State gets picked somewhere around 6th in the Big 12 preseason poll.
Well, and there might be fatigue, John. The last 2 years, K-State's been picked to finish 2nd, right? And they haven't met those expectations. So people could be like, well, I don't know. Like K-State's underachieved technically the last couple of years. So they might take K-State to, probably 4th or 5th, maybe 6th even. You're right. So, yeah, I do think Colorado will take a step back with Hunter gone and then Shedeur. Look, Caden Salter is not Shedeur. I've watched him at Liberty. I know he got him into, a BCS Bowl a couple of years ago, but I watched Salter a couple games this year because I have a problem. And he was not very good. So I think he's fine, but Colorado will take a step back. Arizona State, is Scadaboo gone? Or does he have another year? Because that's going to be a big piece. Now, Levitt being back is obviously your quarterback and building around him. And Tyson, I believe, will be back at receiver because he was only a second-year guy. Yeah, so they're going to have a good core, and Dillingham's probably going to have some success in the portal because they're going to be a sexy program after what they did this year. But, Baylor finished so great, and I love what they're doing with their offense.
I mean, here's the thing. Cam Scadaboo's played 4 years of college football, but who
knows?
I don't know anymore. Like, if it does look – I'm seeing where does Cam Scadaboo fit in the 2025 NFL class?
Nick says he thinks he's got another year. So our producer Nick. So I'm not for sure, but
it's impossible to tell anymore. We got JUCO guys getting an extra year. There's still a COVID thing. I have no idea. No idea what's happening with Cam Scadaboo.
All you got to do is file a lawsuit, and you'll get a judge to throw in some sort of waiver for you. Injunction. I'm sorry, is the word I was looking for.
Yeah, that's basically the deal right now. Okay, I think that will pretty much wrap it up for us. A lot of fun, more fun discussion than I figured this was going to be for a lot of the night. So shout out to everybody involved. Hopefully we gave enough praise there to people who are usually getting dumped on in games when K-State is losing. Alan, I see Alan Aglist in the chat there. Thank you, Alan. I appreciate you, my friend. Good to see some people hopping over from my typical YouTube audience in here. But thanks to Nick Springer behind the scenes for everything, as always. You guys know the drill. Go hit up all of our sponsors, Home Field Apparel, Holiday Distillery, and Alenco, Alenco, home.com. You guys, I saw it in the comments. You guys already know the drill, but go frequent all of our great sponsors. DY, I'm sure will be back soon. He is out on site at the game right now covering the good old-fashioned Rate Bowl, the granddaddy of them all. If only Keith Jackson were alive to have seen the great game that unraveled today.
And we will try to lock down Curry for Curry Sexton, former KC wide receiver, for another film review show to put a bow on that for the season.
Cole, I'm reminded of this now because I saw someone say join the Discord. There were a couple of people in there who said that they have had trouble getting on the Discord. Can I tell them to DM you on Twitter?
Tell them to DM me on Twitter.
Okay, if you guys were in there, I believe Jimmy Ricketts was one of them who, is somebody that I would very much love to chat with on the Discord. So if you have had trouble with that, just DM Cole on Twitter and he will get you taken care of.
And if you're not on Twitter, email me last name Manbeck and then the letter C at live.com, live.com. That's when I'm dedicated. I'll give out my email. Should I give out my cell phone, John? Should I give out my cell?
You're pretty brave there, man. You're pretty brave.
I'm not too worried about it with everybody. So, shoot me an email if you're not on Twitter, and I'll try to get you taken care of. I apologize if anybody's having any issues there.
I figured your email was refsuck@hotmail.com.
Man, look, Harambe and I got into it tonight. I apologize, Harambe, but
you got into it?
Did you not see? Oh, you weren't on
no.
that probably. Yeah, over officiating, and I wasn't blaming the game on officiating, but I thought the hold on Kilty on the Avery scramble was really soft, and he had told me that it was an obvious hold. But then the Jordan Riley gets held at the goal line on that little trick play, fake QB sneak that they ran, and I was like, well, that's worse than that on the edge, and he didn't think it was a hold.
I thought they both were holds, so I'll split the difference there between you.
Yeah. So, anyways, we're getting over it, getting into it. Probably me more so. Probably the emotions talking of the season. But as Harambe said, he's Batman and can take the criticism. So, in typical fashion. So
until he leaves for 3 months, which does tend to happen.
Yes.
But I thought Jordan Riley got held in the end zone, but I also thought Kilty held.
Riley also wasn't gonna make the play, but it was their DN wasn't gonna make the play on what they called the Kilty hold.
You got to give it to. Oh, I just thought of one more thing we haven't even talked about. But you got to give it to Shiano. That's a pretty damn clever play call that they had of that. But you kind of knew the second they lined up in it again. I was just like screaming at my TV. I was like, just watch for something. Like it's not going to be the same thing, guys. And
yeah, the second. I mean, because the first one didn't even gain an inch. So they were still a full yard out.
Yeah. But we have not talked for one single second tonight about how this was good old revenge for all of us that drove whatever it is, like 13 hours to Houston in 2006 to watch Ray Rice and what was it, like Teal? What was Teal's first name?
Mike Teal. Kenny Britt at receiver.
Yeah, watch that Rutgers team just pummel K-State. Outside of a Yamon Figures punt return touchdown, there was nothing else redeeming about that game at all. So revenge for everybody. Take that, Shiano.
Yeah. And K-State now 3-1 in their last 4 bowl games with Kleiman. He goes over 500 now, 3-2. You know what we didn't even talk about, John? Really, the biggest storyline was what the alternate
they got
uniform.
over
the uniform curse is over. Could you have imagined if they just got ran out of that stadium when it was 34-17, like the alternate uniforms would burn in Phoenix tonight?
Yeah, we would have never, ever, ever heard the end of that. I could hear. I love Mitch Holthus to death, man. I love him, and he was so awesome coming on the radio show all the time back in the day when I was doing the radio show at K-Man. But I do remember getting into a back and forth with him one time about he hated it. Now, I think he specifically hated the Cats helmets more so than anything, but did not like the alternate uniforms. And I remember getting the record shoved back in my face. We have finally conquered that. So hopefully that leads to a little bit more flexibility because yes, AJ, the all whites are fabulous. And unfortunately they wore them against Navy. So yeah, don't wear them against Army next year. I wouldn't do that, but hopefully they can start mixing something in.
Yeah, put them on in Ireland. Rock the all whites. No, it's too stressful.
Yeah, I don't know that I would do that. Yeah, all right. Couple important points to cover before we get out of there. All right. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, sponsors. Thanks, everybody in the chat. We will talk to you soon. Take care. We'll see you on 3 Mile.